From Sony's PlayStation come the greatest hits, all your old favorites.
Like the soft sounds of swarming missiles.
And the gentle crack of Sophia's equipment.
Feel the hilarious antics of Sweet Tooth, that lovable clown.
All for just $24.99 each. But wait.
There's more? Oh.
That's right. The PlayStation is a mere $149. And you can also get leading titles.
Like Crash Bandicoot and Jet Moto.
For just $49.99 and less.
You are not ready.
Welcome back to another episode of Classic Gaming Quarterly. Right up front, obviously, this is the first time I've uploaded to this channel in about a year. And to be honest, after 10 years of doing Classic Gaming Quarterly, I just needed a break. And I'm back now. I've got a bunch of new projects in the works, including the next launch video, another long-form video on top of that, and another magazine read-through. I have still been uploading regularly, to those of you who are not aware, to the other channel, CGQ+, and I'll put a link, as usual, to that down in the video description. Over there, over the summer, I started a new series that I think is 16 episodes in now, called Weekend Rental, predictably, where I take a game that's maybe a little bit lesser known, not always, but usually, and just talk about it and then kind of play through it. It's all very casual, but I'm having a great time doing it, and the people that are watching it seem to enjoy it. So check it out, Weekend Rental on CGQ+. Now, obviously it's Christmas, and as you saw from the thumbnail and the title of the video, we are checking out PSM Issue number 4 from December of 1997, and we've actually already done read-throughs of PSM issues 1 through 3. And I think 2 of those were on this channel. One was on the other channel. It doesn't really matter. And so I know I've already explained this, but I'll just say it again. PSM was the first gaming magazine that I ever subscribed to. And this very issue is actually the first issue that I got as part of my subscription. I sent in the subscription card from issue 2, never got issue 3, and then got this one in the mail. So very nostalgic issue for me. And you can see that the cover is Christmas themed. Oh, by the way, we're doing this new thing. In order to help me keep my hands out of the frame, I've got a little hand pencil topper here with which I can point to things. So that's exciting. Anyway, Christmas themed cover here on the logo. And as you can see, we've got Lara Croft on the cover because Tomb Raider 2 had very recently come out. There's going to be a holiday buyer's guide, which should be interesting to check out. And they've got strategies for Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, which is the first Oddworld. Street Fighter EX, that's actually Street Fighter EX, EX Plus Alpha, EX Plus. Yeah, I think it's just EX Plus. Colony Wars, and then it's cut off there, but that is Test Drive 4. And then I can't tell what that says. Something mum coverage, maximum. Let's say it's maximum coverage. Final Fantasy Tactics. I believe that's Spawn the Eternal, Breath of Fire 3, and NCAA Game Breaker. On the inside cover here is an ad for Disney's Hercules. And I think this ad was in this exact same spot when I did the read through of issue number 2, and I just dismissed the game saying that, back when I got this magazine in the mail, I was 20 years old and I would not have been at all interested in a game like this. And I just, moved on to the next page. But since the ad is here again, I went ahead and actually checked the game out. And I have to say, it's actually a pretty good game. I have never seen Disney's Hercules, so I don't know, how closely the game follows the movie. I mean, who really cares? But it's actually a pretty fun. It's a side-scrolling platformer, but it's not 2D. It's actually 3D. Although I think there's some sprites intermixed with the 3D graphics. But there are multiple planes that you can be in. Like there's the primary plane, which is in the foreground, but there's areas in the game where you can kind of go into the background and do other stuff. So that's pretty cool. Again, I haven't seen the movie, but I understand that Danny DeVito did one of the voices in the movie. and his voice, I should say, appears in the game.
Come on, kid, concentrate! Use your head!
Pretty cool game. I'm glad I checked it out. Maybe, if you're looking for a game to play with your kids, or if your kids are a fan of the movie, then I definitely recommend checking out Hercules. Another ad here for Jet Moto 2. I can't remember if they reviewed Jet Moto 2 in the issue as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a good game. I don't know if I would say that I think it's better than the first game or not. Jet Moto is just not the kind of game that I was ever going to purchase. Like, to me, Jet Moto, I'm sure at some point back then I rented a Jet Moto game. But, I'd also always check out, if you got a demo disc and there was a Jet Moto game on there, I would play it. But just not maybe enough meat on the bone for me to get super into it. But it is a fun game. Some of the tracks I feel like are a little bit more confusing. Like, you can almost get lost. Whereas I feel like in the first game that was never a problem for me. But okay game. Jet Moto, of course, was made by Single Track, who was kind of a major player in the early days of the PlayStation. They made Warhawk, and probably more importantly, they made Twisted Metal. Here we get to the letter from the editor and sort of the masthead over here. And I'm sure I pointed out every single time, but I think it's cool that they show sort of mock-ups or whatever you want to call it, rough drafts of the cover art before you get to the final there. I mean, it looks like the second sketch here, they just ended up doing a mirror image of it, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, that's about it. I can't remember if this came up in a previous issue or not, but I'll just point out that all of the staff over here are wearing these PaRappa the Rapper beanies. And I remember that in a subsequent issue to this, somebody wrote in a letter, or probably multiple people wrote in letters, asking where they could get these beanies. And, the response from the editors was basically like, sorry, it was just something that the publishers gave to us as a promo thing. But, this is kind of before the time when getting something like a pre-order bonus was as common as it is now. And they also didn't really sell, stuff like, I don't know what to call it, like gaming paraphernalia. I don't know, in the way they do now. Like if this game had come out now, you could go into Target and buy one of these beanies. But back then that wasn't really the case. And so, people were looking for these beanies, but they just weren't available. There's an ad for Fighting Force. I know we've talked about Fighting Force before. Fighting Force it's an okay game. It's made by Core, same people that made Tomb Raider. To me, Fighting Force just goes to show you that, in my opinion at least, the beat 'em up genre just didn't translate well to 3D. Fighting Force is okay. I don't hate it, but it's nowhere near as good as a Streets of Rage game or Final Fight or fill in your favorite beat 'em up game there. And I think that's why you see now when you get these sort of retro-styled beat-em-up games like Streets of Rage 4 or Shredder's Revenge, they go back to the side-scrolling style because it's just what works. Table of contents. Again, I probably point this out every time. I really appreciate it when magazines include this game index so that if you're looking for something, you can just go straight there. But other than that, we're going to read the whole magazine, so we don't need to hang out here. Here's an ad for Cool Borders 2. And I don't, aside from, demo discs back then, I don't recall ever renting a Cool Borders game. And I know I never owned one. I didn't get into playing snowboarding games until I got my PS2 because SSX was the game that I bought at launch. But, back here in 1997, there really weren't that many snowboarding games out yet. There was, Heavy Shreddin' on the NES to go way back. And then on the Super Nintendo, you had Tommy Moe's Winter Extreme, I think it's called. And then that game got sort of remade for the Atari Jaguar as, like Val d'Isere Skiing and Snowboarding or something like that. But, so back then there just wasn't a whole lot going on as far as snowboarding games came out until Cool Borders came out. And before anybody says, what about 1080 snowboarding on the N64, that didn't come out until 1998. So Cool Borders, I think, kind of like, blew the doors open on, snowboarding being a video game genre. And of course, this is around the same time when snowboarding made it into the Olympics. I don't remember. I want to say that was like the 2002 Olympics. I don't remember. But it's when I think the popularity of snowboarding took off. So, and I think Cool Borders certainly opened the door for SSX. And this does get reviewed later, so I'll wait and talk about it then. The monitor section, this is just sort of like, news, gaming news. And so like here they've got a feature here on Diablo. Diablo sets the PlayStation on fire. I just, full disclosure, I have never played a Diablo game. I had a PC around this time, but it was far too old to play a Diablo game. And so I missed out on it. And I think I just had, and this will come up again later in this issue, but I just had a thing where like I didn't buy a PlayStation because I wanted to play ports or conversions of PC games. I wanted to play PlayStation games. And so something like that, I don't recall ever seeing Diablo on store shelves, but if I had, I wouldn't have been particularly interested in playing it. And this is pretty interesting. Play your PlayStation game discs on your PC. And this is a little blurb about a PlayStation emulator for the PC called PSEMU. And it was only around for a couple of years. I think development on PSMU stopped in like 1999. But anybody out there, if you ever use the EPSXE emulator for the PC, some of the code in EPSXE actually comes from PSMU. So, and that's what, 25-ish years ago, 26 years ago. So pretty neat. And down here, vibration may still be in our future. So I'm sure you all remember, but for anybody that doesn't, we got, originally we just had the digital pads that came with our consoles. And then later we got analog controllers, not the analog joystick, but analog controllers that did not have force feedback in them due to some legal dispute that Sony was involved in. And I remember getting one of those controllers right when it came out, and I really enjoyed it. I had never played anything that had force feedback, so I didn't really know what I was missing out on. But as they're alluding to here, we of course did end up getting the DualShock controller. Down here, some peripherals that I'm not really particularly interested in. And then over here are just sort of some little quick hits, notes it calls them. And like the second one down, members of the core team responsible for Pandemonium 2, which we're going to talk about in a minute, have left Crystal Dynamics to start their own game company. The tentative name for the new company is Shaba Games, and the first title will be for the PlayStation. And they ended up making, I think it was like a Razor scooter, Razor freestyle scooter. What else did they make? Grind Session. And I don't remember what else, but they kind of made sort of like extreme sports games. And I only say any of this because they ended up getting bought out by Activision. So I assume that ended up being pretty lucrative for these developers that took the chance and split off from Crystal Dynamics. Net Yaroze update. I used to look at this, back then, but, I think I would think, oh, it would be neat, to be able to develop PlayStation games, but I didn't know the first thing about programming anything, really. And I don't even remember ever visiting any of these websites. Seeing if there's anything else. Oh, down here, Fly-by-Wire. Shiny's remote control helicopter flight sim will not be published by Interplay after all, blah, blah, blah. That ended up being, I think it's called RC Stuntcopter. And then here's an ad. This kind of goes into what I was saying about Diablo. Command & Conquer Red Alert. It may very well be a great game, but, even back then I knew that, Command & Conquer, that's a PC game. And again, I just didn't really have a lot of interest in playing PC ports on my PlayStation. Here's an ad for Beast Wars Transformers. And I'll be very honest and say that I had never heard of, apparently this is an animated series, Beast Wars Transformers, and they made this game based on that. My experience with Transformers really is back in the 80s. I used to watch the original cartoon on TV. I went and saw the movie in the movie theater, and of course I had some Transformers toys, but I was completely unaware of Beast Wars Transformers. Played the game. I don't think it's very good at all. It's a third-person action game. You can transform your guy from a robot into whatever beast he's based on. The one I was playing was Optimus. I forgot the name. It was Optimus, but not Optimus Prime. And he transforms into like a silverback gorilla. But I don't know. It's the kind of game where if you had ended up renting it, for a weekend, you'd play through it just to play something. But not very good, in my opinion. Over here is the PaRappa the Rapper, I Gotta Believe sweepstakes. That's kind of his tagline in the game, I Gotta Believe. And we've talked about this before, but, I think this has something to do with it not being gambling. They have to make it like a skill thing, so you have to answer these 3 basic questions about the game. First prize wins one of these gigantic 200-disc Sony jukebox CD players. So that's pretty cool. And a copy of the game there. And a few other things. First prize, though, you get a PlayStation-branded leather varsity jacket. And it's kind of funny because now the CD player is the kind of thing you'd find in the thrift store. But, if you had one of those jackets, that'd be quite the collector's item. Here's some gossip. And, the main thing I think on here that I think is noteworthy is Square to do its own publishing. And I think, because it mentions in here that Square's deal with Sony was running out for Sony to do Square's publishing for them, and that Square was going to go ahead and take over doing it themselves. And the reason I think why is here in the second paragraph. In addition to earning higher profit margins on its sales, Square would also put the task of localizing its products in its own hands, instead of in the more conservative hands of Sony. And, I can't help but assume that has something to do with the localization of Final Fantasy VII and, how the translation was rushed and maybe isn't super accurate. And, sorry, this thing's squeaky. Down here, new Contra on the way. So they got a little picture here of Contra Legacy of War, and it's just mentioning that Appaloosa, who developed Contra Legacy of War, was being allowed, if you want to say, to develop a second Contra game, which I think is See the Contra Adventure, also for the PlayStation, naturally. And, I'm not saying that Contra Legacy of War is a good game, but I think it's at least an interesting game. They did something different with the format. But, the game they're talking about here, See the Contra Adventure, is just really, it feels like a generic side-scrolling run-and-gun action game. Like, I would say it's a step backwards. And interestingly, that game is a North American exclusive, which kind of says something about what Konami thought of it. Like, they didn't want to show it to their Japanese audience. Here is Nihon Game Otaku, which was written by this guy, Bill Paris, who, is basically just the editor in charge of talking about, import stuff or what's going on in Japan. So first feature here is on Tomba. We got it here as Tomba. There it was called Tonba, or I don't know if Ore Tonba is its full name. I think it was kind of noteworthy. So this guy, Tokuro Fujiwara from Capcom, left the company to start his own company, Whoopee Camp. This guy Fujiwara, had his hands all over all of your favorite games growing up at Capcom. It mentions Bionic Commando and Ghouls and Ghosts, but he worked on far more than that, like a bunch of Mega Man games, the early Resident Evil games, etc. And so for him to leave and start his own company was kind of a big deal for people who were paying attention. And so this was the first game that came out from them. And it's a 3D side-scrolling platformer. And visually, it's beautiful. But for me personally, there's something about the way it controls. I don't like the way it feels. It's not a common game, so it's a collector's item. Both of them, I believe there's a Tomba 2 as well. I have no idea what they sell for. I don't really care. I don't have them. But obviously I played the game and recorded some footage for this episode, and it's not bad, but I really couldn't get into it. Down here, Cho Atsui, which means super hot. So I don't know if that's their way of saying, oh, here's a super hot game that we're going to talk about from Japan. And this is this game, Ganbare Morikawa-kun 2. And it seems like it's some kind of like outer space farming simulator. I don't really know. I mean, that guy looks like a potato with a bow tie, or with a necktie on, rather. This game did come out in Europe as Pet in TV. So anybody watching from Europe, maybe you remember Pet in TV, did not come out here. And over here is a Metal Gear Solid update, or as they just say, Metal Gear update. I can't overstate how highly anticipated it was back then. They would talk about that game constantly in PSM until it came out. Oddly, and I don't understand why, I never got the game back then. I don't know if that has something to do with my memories of trying to play the original Metal Gear on the NES, but that game got so hyped up, and rightfully so, and somehow I just never bought it, and I don't understand why. Down here's a little blurb about, I don't know, DigiCube, I guess, is this company that was going to sell video game hardware and software in convenience stores in Japan. It mentions 7-Eleven and Circle K. And, for anybody that might not know, 7-Eleven and Circle K are both hugely popular in Japan, especially in big cities. I have not been to Japan, but from what I've been told, if you go to Tokyo, there's either a 7-Eleven or a Circle K on practically every block. And so to be able to go to one of those places and buy the latest video games would be pretty cool. And over here is the top 10 sellers in Japan. Always interesting for me back in the day to look at, because, these would basically become the games that I was anticipating coming out here. If this game was so popular there, hopefully we'll get it here. Number 1 is Breath of Fire 3. Number 3, this was the prime example of a game that I was really looking forward to. Mina no Golf, which we got here as Hot Shots Golf, and I did buy that as soon as it came out. Number 5, the aforementioned Cool Borders 2. Number 6, Derby Stallion. Obviously, Japanese people have a big thing with either horse racing, or at the very least, horse racing video games. Number 7 says Monster Farm, so I don't know if that was Monster Rancher. What we got here is Monster Rancher. Number 8, Saga Frontier. And number 10, Final Fantasy Tactics. Now we get into the reviews section, although before we get there, I'll just point this out. We'll see the second half of this ad at the end of the review section. So here's half an ad for the Sony SAVA7 speaker system. And I actually have these speakers, although unfortunately I got them in white or a very light gray instead of this sort of slate or dark gray. I just got them really from seeing the ads in these PSM issues, and just because I thought they would be really cool with my bigger Sony PVM. So it's kind of unfortunate that they showed up white instead of black, because the listing said they were going to be black. But we can find the other half of the ad real fast. But sort of the selling point with these speakers, it was like the simulated surround sound. So here's the other half of the ad. So like each one of these speaker boxes has 1, 2, 3, 4 drivers in it. So here there's one driver pointing straight ahead. There's one driver that's towed inward. There's one driver on the top firing upward, and then there's a subwoofer underneath. So the driver facing straight ahead was supposed to be the left or right channel. The two drivers towed in combined together to make your center channel. The theory was that the driver on top was going to like bounce off the back wall and bounce off the ceiling, and somehow you were going to hear it behind you. I don't know about that. And then the subwoofer is sort of self-explanatory, but they're pretty cool speakers. I mean, there's not really any reason to get something like that now. except that it's a cool thing to have, but you wouldn't buy it for its performance. First review we have here is for Crash Bandicoot 2. Cortex Strikes Back. Bandicoot. People don't like the way I say Bandicoot, so Bandicoot. I played I think it was the first Crash Bandicoot on a demo disc, and I never really got into the Crash Bandicoot games back then. I don't know if I saw them as being like for kids. I mean, I don't think so, but I don't know why I wasn't really into playing them. I wasn't really that sold on 3D platformers back then. It took me a while to come around to those. I did play the game, to get some gameplay footage for the episode, and I'm sure I've played it before, but it's a fun game. They give it a 5 out of 5, so there you go. The only real complaint they have two. They say Crash 2 only has a couple real problems, but they do stick with you sometimes. And they mention that to get the true ending, you have to find a lot of these special hidden gems, and that finding them is practically impossible without a guide. So I guess that would be sort of an issue. And then they complain that it isn't compatible with the analog controller. This was sort of this transition period between everyone having digital controllers and people starting to buy the analog controllers, and some games just weren't compatible yet with the analog controllers. But I think it's a fun game, and definitely worth checking out for anybody out there that hasn't. Kart World Series. So I guess this is during that period of time when like IndyCar and kart were kind of going through a thing, I think. And they only give it a 3. I don't know. I had fun with it, but one thing I noticed, when I started playing the game, because I think they mentioned in here the game's frame rate. It says, unfortunately, kart doesn't offer high-resolution graphics or a frame rate well-suited for a game that's supposed to be selling the sensation of intense speed. So when I started playing the game, I was playing it in like practice mode, where I was like the only car on the track, and the game was running like super smooth. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, what's their problem with the frame rate? But then I went and played an actual race where you've got like 20 or however many other cars on the track with you, and the frame rate definitely takes a huge hit. Next game down here is NHL 98, and that is one of my absolute favorite PlayStation games, or at least it was back then. I got NHL 97, I think was the second PlayStation game I ever bought, and I played the crap out of that game even though NHL 97 really not very good, but I played it until NHL 98 came out. And in my opinion, NHL 98 is the best hockey game on the PlayStation. NHL, I don't know what happened. NHL 99, all of a sudden, the frame rate of that game is like terrible. Like, it's not slow, it just has a low frame rate. And for that reason, I could just never get into it. But NHL 98, aside from just, it feels great to play it, but they did such a good job of recreating a hockey game, the feeling of a hockey game, as far as like the ambient sounds in the arena, even the music that plays in the arena. Obviously, there's the organ, but sometimes between, before a face-off, instead of an organ, it would be, rock music. Because if you went to an actual hockey game, it would be like actual rock music. But, in this game, I imagine that EA didn't want to have to license any music. So it's all sort of generic 90s rock music, but it sounds really good. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Oh, this is another example. This game is not compatible, as far as I know, with analog controllers. That didn't come until NHL 99. But, it kind of presents itself as, a simulation game, but, it still has all of the ridiculously, hard checks that you can lay on people, that are completely unrealistic, but that's what makes the game so much fun. Oh, you have different camera angles you can use. The default camera angle is fine, but one of the other camera angles I like, it's more of an overhead, pulled back a little bit view, and I think it recreates the view of the 16-bit hockey games really well. But if you're looking for, I don't know why you'd be looking for a hockey game to play on the PlayStation in 2023/2024, but if you are, in my opinion, as far as semi-realistic games go, you cannot do better than NHL 98. And then next is Nightmare Creatures, and they give it a 3.5, which I think is fair. Nightmare Creatures is like a third-person, 3D action game that's, sort of got a survival horror vibe to it, I guess. I mean, it's more arcadey, compared. It's nothing like playing Resident Evil, but I thought it was pretty fun. I didn't play that much of it, but what I played of it made me think, this isn't half bad. Really bad draw-in. And I feel like horror games used to take advantage of that because it made it easier to scare you. And if you remember Silent Hill, they used that fog. And really the fog was there to cover up the draw-in. But, I think they kind of sold it as like making the game scarier. And Nightmare Creatures, I'm not saying Nightmare Creatures has the fog going on, but it's kind of the same thing. Next is Pandemonium 2. And, I used to always see these Pandemonium ads in these magazines, but the ads, and I don't remember if there's an ad in here or not, but the ads never helped me understand what kind of game they were. And so I never played any of the Pandemonium games. I think there's just 2, I think. And I finally fired up Pandemonium 2 just to get some gameplay footage. And oh, by the way, Crystal Dynamics game. I mentioned that already because of the Shaba Games thing. Pandemonium 2, I thought it's really fun. It's at its heart, it's a side-scrolling platform game. It's in 3D and the world kind of rotates around, but you're still sort of like on a track. And in that sense, it's side-scrolling. It's just in a 3D world. And combat, or fighting against enemies is really de-emphasized, and it's really a lot more about, collecting coins and finding they're not coins. I don't know what they are. The game calls it treasure. They look like coins with a jewel in them. I don't know. But the point of the game is like, you're trying to find at least 80% of the coins in each level to unlock like a bonus stage. It just seems like a really cool, chill game that I definitely want to play some more. Test Drive 4, there were so many driving games on the PlayStation. I think that, and I've probably mentioned this before, but the jump to 3D, I can hardly think of a gaming genre that benefited more than driving games did. And as a result, you saw that on the 3DO, and then you saw it on the PlayStation. This massive expansion of the driving game subgenre. And they give Test Drive 4 a 4 out of 5. And it's definitely a good game. It's, if I remember correctly, it's either not compatible with the analog stick or the analog stick doesn't feel that good. I don't remember which. But I found the game pretty hard to play. I found the cars a little bit difficult to control. I can't say that the physics are realistic because I've never driven any of the cars in this game, but they feel like, they sell realism anyway. And but this is all the time before Gran Turismo came out, and I feel like once that happened, every other game got compared to Gran Turismo. And I felt like once you got Gran Turismo, every driving game, at least like this, that you had was made obsolete. Next, here's Jet Moto 2, which we already talked about. They give it a 3.5 out of 5. They say the graphics look the same as the first game. The music is not nearly as cool this time around. I don't really remember noticing that, so I'll take their word for it. The concept is the same, still solid. I'll play it until I open all the tracks. So, yeah. Mass Destruction. If they give this game a 3, that's probably fair. Mass Destruction, if I had to describe it, Mass Destruction is like playing a Desert Strike, or, a Strike series game. Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, whatever game, but you're in a little tank instead of having a helicopter. Very reminiscent of the Return Fire games on, for sure that was on the 3DO. I don't remember what other systems Return Fire might have appeared on, but I thought it was a lot of fun. I think that giving it a 3 is probably fair. I mean, it's not that great, but I had fun playing it and I would definitely play it again. Next one down here, speaking of driving games, is Need for Speed V Rally. And I have to say, I actually had a lot of fun playing this game. Obviously, it's a rally game. Decent graphics. I don't know. They say the graphics are a little rough on the eyes. I didn't find it to be that way. The game just ran so smoothly. And I do enjoy driving games, so I had a lot of fun playing it. Down here, Cool Borders 2. I said I would talk about it a little bit more once we got to the review, and I just wanted to mention that the graphics, they mention here the graphics are passable. And the real issue with it, you know, I don't really get into the technical side of, you know, game development or game hardware or game anything. But there are very noticeable seams between like all of the polygons in the game, and it just looks really, really bad. And I'm surprised that they would release a game looking like that. They criticize the game in here. They're saying that, you know, the downhill portions of the game are just kind of boring. And like the reviewer even says, I'll play it in half pipe mode until my thumbs fall off. So you're saying like the half pipe mode is fun. The downhill mode, not so much fun. And, you know, I really think that is what SSX really did. What they brought to the genre is, I think SSX brought the fun of a half pipe mode into the downhill mode. But other than that, yeah, Cool Borders 3, they gave it a 3.5. That's fair. I might even say that's generous. Over here is Tomb Raider 2, which expectedly they give a 5 out of 5. I'm not sure what I would say new Tomb Raider 2 brings to the table. They mentioned that the graphics are a little bit better. I haven't like done an A/B comparison to check myself, but to me, it's like Tomb Raider 2 is just like all what you want is more Tomb Raider with just like different adventures. And that's exactly what the game offers. Down here is Red Asphalt. And I wrote in my notes, and I know this is a well-worn joke, but in my notes, I just wrote 1995 called, and they want their video game back. Just because that's what Red Asphalt feels like to me playing it. Anybody who was like an early adopter of the PlayStation, played a lot of the games that came out in like 95, 96. There were just a lot of these car combat games. And, you know, obviously, Twisted Metal, you know, sticks up above the crowd as far as that goes. But Red Asphalt just feels very samey compared to a lot of the other games. I will say I think the graphics look better than what you were going to see in 95 or 96, which is to be expected. But I think the controls in the game, they just kind of suck. It's hard to control your car. You suddenly like lose. Going around a corner, it just, the back end of your car just snaps and you fishtail and spin out. And, you know, obviously I would expect that to happen if you were just driving around the track holding down the gas pedal. But, you know, I tried to be a good driver and like slow down for the corners, and it just didn't matter. I would still lose control of my car. And it's too bad, because it's like, if they had fixed the control problems and this game had come out like a year earlier, I think it would have been a much bigger deal than it was. And then last on the page is Rampage World Tour. And they give it, I'll say, I think Rampage World Tour is a very good game, but they give it a 2.5. And seemingly their reason is it's 1997. Who wants to still play Rampage? Because at its core, it's still the same game. So when you can go now and get a copy of Rampage World Tour for $5 or $10, or you can fire it up in an emulator, yeah, I think it's a great game. Would I have paid $40 or $50 for it in 1997? Absolutely not. And that's saying that as somebody who was a pretty big fan of Rampage when I was a kid, like down the street from my house, we had a Straw Hat Pizza, and they had, you know, 2 or 3 arcade games, as did every pizza parlor back then. And one of them was Rampage, and I used to play it a lot. Fighting Force, we already talked about. They give it a 3.5. I would just say that I think that is a fair score. Next is MDK, and I've talked about MDK before, and I think what I've just always said about it is it's just a game that I'm not able to get into. It came out obviously for the PlayStation, and then later came out on the Dreamcast. And, you know, I've mentioned before not being into the game, and I've had people leave comments on the videos and, oh, you should give it a second chance. And I have, and I'm not saying it's bad. There's just something about the game that I just can't get into it. And then the last one here on the page is Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. I've never played the game. I'm not a huge Mortal Kombat fan. They gave it a 2.5, and frankly, that was enough for me to just not even try it. We have talked about in a previous, I think it was a previous PSM read-through, Ghost in the Shell over here. And I'm not an anime guy. I don't watch anime. I don't know much about anime. So I've never seen Ghost in the Shell. But this game is a lot of fun. Like, you don't have to know anything about the series to appreciate the game. It was made, you see, it's published by THQ, but it was actually made by Exact, who also made the Jumping Flash games. And like I've seen it written that, oh, it's the same game engine. And, you know, I don't really know if programming PlayStation games even works that way. Is it really the same game engine? Do they just share some code? I have no idea. But if you play this game, you can definitely see the similarities in how the game plays with Jumping Flash. And the Jumping Flash games are awesome. And then that's the end of the reviews. And then over here they have this flashback section. And that's where they take games that they reviewed back when they came out in Ultra Game Players. Because, of course, this is only issue 4 of PSM. But, you know, this is PSM is an offshoot of Ultra Game Players. And so they take these games that they reviewed, you know, a year or two ago and give them updated scores. So, like, the first one here is Epidemic, which is the sequel. They say it right here. The sequel to Kilik, the DNA Imperative. They call it the DNA Operative, which was that the Japanese name? I believe here in the US it was the DNA Imperative. Doesn't really matter. They knocked it down from a 4 to a 3. I've never played the game, so I don't have an opinion. Next over here is Assault Rigs, which I actually have that game. I think Assault Rigs is a very fun game, in my opinion. It's a fun multiplayer game, but they knock it down from a 4 to a 2. That's fair. If you play Assault Rigs, the game came out in February of 1996, and it definitely feels like a game that came out in February of 1996. And then the last one here is NHL Face-Off. And I wanted to mention this one only because by this time, Face-Off 97 was certainly out. And probably Face-Off 98 was getting ready to come out. And so you might ask yourself, why are they reviewing a 2-year-old sports game? Like, why would you re-review that? Who's going to go buy? Because right now, nobody's going to go to Target or wherever you go buy games and buy like a 2-year-old edition of like Madden, right? But my theory or my suspicion is that in late 1997, that's when PlayStation launched their greatest hits line. And NHL Face-Off was one of those games. And so like you could go to the store and spend $50 on a current hockey game, or you could go spend, you know, $20 or $25 on the original Face-Off instead. And so I think that's why they review it here. Although they basically say down here, why spend $30 for it when you can get this year's version for a few bucks more? So, which I would agree with. Ad for MDK. And then here is the PSM Holiday Special, 1997. I don't remember if they kept doing this every year. I have to assume so. But, you know, it's basically a buyer's guide. And they have everything separated out into genre. So first here they've got fighting games. And basically what they have is nice and naughty, you know, predictably. And so here's 3 games that they recommend, and then 1 game that they recommend you avoid. And so for fighting games, you've got Street Fighter EX Plus, which, I don't really know what the opinion of like the fighting game community is on Street Fighter EX, but, it's a 3D game, but it still plays like a 2D game. I felt playing it like it ran a little bit slower than what I'm used to. I don't know if that's just the PlayStation or if it's that way in the arcade. I mean, it seemed pretty cool, but I guess to me, it's like, why would you play that when you could play Street Fighter 3 at this time instead in the arcades? They've also got Bushido Blade down here. I've talked about Bushido Blade before. I got this game when it came out. And Bushido Blade, that is a Squaresoft game. They tried to kind of do something different with the genre, where it's still a one-on-one fighting game, but there are no like life bars, and you can kill your opponent with one shot, or it can turn into a more protracted battle. You can injure your opponent, or you can get injured so that like you lose the use of one of your arms. Or I had a fight where both me and my opponent basically lost the use of our legs or our feet, and like we were scooching around the floor trying to kill each other, which is kind of silly. But for that reason, I would think that the game would not appeal to hardcore fighting game fans. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but they tried to do something different, and I appreciate that. There was a Bushido Blade 2. I don't honestly know if the series progressed beyond that. And then the last one here is Street Fighter Collection. And that's kind of interesting because I know a lot of people were kind of down on Street Fighter Collection because the 3 games that you got with it were Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which, some people are not into Super Street Fighter 2. And then the last one is it came with a version of Street Fighter Alpha 2. I think it was called Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold. Personally, I think that Street Fighter Collection 2 is better, because that one has Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. And then I've never played it. Naughty Dragon Ball GT Final Bout. I have no idea. Next is platform games. And first here is the aforementioned Crash Bandicoot 2. Second, Mega Man X4. That was one of the very first PlayStation games that I bought as well. That might be game number 3, Mega Man X4. Just because, I had so many great memories growing up of playing Mega Man games on the NES. I don't think I really knew what the Mega Man X games were because I never had a Super Nintendo back then. And I don't know, I was excited to buy the game, and then I just didn't get into it. Not because it's not a good game, but I think it's just not what I was looking for in a video game. Like, I think I bought it for nostalgic reasons, and then I just wasn't that into it. And then the last one here, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. I think I mentioned already that's the first Oddworld game. That's a really cool game. I wish I had bought Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. And in fact, and I don't know why I didn't. I remember one time my friend Rafe brought a stack of games over to my house. He also had a PlayStation, and he brought Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. And the game is just really, really cool. I mean, so the game, for anybody that hasn't played it, I mean, Oddworld plays, I would say, very similarly to something like Out of This World or Flashback, which I guess, they take a lot of inspiration from Prince of Persia, so there you go. But just like the ambiance or the atmosphere, whatever you want to call it, of Oddworld, like they just nailed it. And it's also just a really good game. And then again, for the naughty, Jurassic Park The Lost World, I've never played it, so I really don't have an opinion. Action-adventure games, first one, obvious, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That, at this time, was a very recent release. And, everybody knows it's one of the best games on the PlayStation. Some people don't care for the transition to something more open world or, Metroidvania, like people like to say. I think it's great. I like them both, so no problem for me. Second, Tomb Raider 2, which we already talked about. And then third, Resident Evil Director's Cut. Oh, Naughty, Fantastic Four. Again, haven't played that one. Sports games, NFL Game Day 98. I'm pretty sure I had NFL Game Day 98. In fact, I think I got it for Christmas in 1997. So that's cool. And then, of course, NHL 98. And then the last one here that's kind of interesting, NBA In the Zone 98. They say this pick was tough to call because at press time, we hadn't played the final versions of all the basketball games, but we figured that with the NBA season heating up, you'd want to know which hoops game to go with. Since we liked Konami's In the Zone 2 the best last year, we're going to go with In the Zone 98 for now. So they haven't actually played it, but they're recommending it anyway. But at least they're explaining to you why. So you're kind of taking a risk on that one if you follow their advice. And then once again, Naughty NCAA Final Four, haven't played it. Next is driving games. We already talked about Jet Moto 2 and Test Drive 4, but they mentioned here Moto Racer. And they said, we didn't realize it until we got in Moto Racer, but up to now, there haven't been any other motorcycle racing games on the PlayStation. They mentioned Road Rash, but that doesn't really count, which I agree. Although it's a great game. The thing that struck me about Moto Racer, some people are, I guess, really sensitive to, frame rate, and like I said, with something like NHL 99, yeah, the frame rate was so bad that I noticed. But, I don't know if Moto Racer runs at 60 frames per second. All I'll say is that I think the game runs ridiculously smoothly. And it really feels like a spiritual successor to Sega's Hang-On games. Really, really fun. Strategy games, I wasn't really into playing strategy games for the most part on the PlayStation. Command and Conquer, which we already talked about. Syndicate Wars. So my thing, the original Syndicate on the PlayStation is like one of my all-time favorite games. And so back then, if I wanted to play Syndicate, I was going to play more Syndicate on my PC. I wasn't going to play on a PlayStation. So I never checked out Syndicate Wars. And then last is Carnage Heart, which I've never played, so I can't really say anything about it. Shooting games. First is Colony Wars. Colony Wars is a great game. I guess kind of ironically, I would say I like Colony Wars because it reminds me of X-Wing on the PC. So I guess because it's not literally a conversion of a PC game, I think that one's cool. I don't really know, but there were, I think, 3 Colony Wars games on the PlayStation, and they're all really good. Time Crisis. I don't know. Everybody talks about Time Crisis. If you have a Gun Con, Namco Gun Con, check out Time Crisis if you haven't already. And then Nuclear Strike. I can't remember if that's the 4th or I think that's the 5th. Yeah, I think it's the 5th entry in the Strike series. You had Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Nuclear Strike, Soviet Strike, Nuclear Strike, right? Isn't that what I did? Desert, Jungle. Oh, no. Desert, Jungle, Urban, Soviet, Nuclear. There you go. And then Independence Day, no idea. But over here is an ad for Courier Crisis. This is a cool game. How do I describe? Courier Crisis is like a proto Crazy Taxi, but you're a bike messenger. So I don't know. It almost feels like if you took Road Rash, but with bicycles instead of motorcycles, and mashed it up with Crazy Taxi, you would get Courier Crisis. Really, really cool game. Pro Pinball Time Shock. I can't remember if there were 3 or 4 Pro Pinball games on the PlayStation, but this is from an era before pinball. Once Pinball Arcade became a thing on computers and on modern consoles, that to me that's like the final word in video pinball games. But back in the 90s and the 80s, we had to play rough approximations of pinball on our TV screens, and most of the games, not all, most games were not based on real world tables. Games like Pinbot on the NES would be an exception to that, right? Because I think Pinbot is a real table. But these pro pinball games, they're just really, really excellent physics, high resolution graphics. I think the games run in 640 by 480. They run in either one of the highest or the highest resolution mode that the PlayStation can display. So for the time, they were just incredible. I mean, if you're into pinball, certainly go check them out now. But, now we have Pinball Arcade, so why would you want to play anything else, really? And then The holiday guide continuing over here. We get into role-playing games. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII. I'm sure I've talked about Final Fantasy VII on the show before. Well, I have before in PSM read-throughs. Once again, one of my all-time favorite games. These other two I haven't played yet, although I would like to play. Wild Arms and Vandal Hearts. And then interestingly, for Naughty, they have none. So basically all the RPGs released this year are extremely good. So there you go. That's good. And then I guess games that sort of defy categorization down here. They've got PaRappa the Rapper, which I guess I mentioned a little bit earlier. Rhythm game. I'm really not very good at it, but what a great game. Like, even I can appreciate the fact that it's a great game. Designed by, I can't remember his first name. His last name is Matsuura. He's a famous musician in Japan and got into making video games, made PaRappa the Rapper, and then after that, I believe he made Vib Ribbon, which didn't come out here, I don't think. Monster Rancher, haven't played it. Poi Poi, have not played it. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, another one of my favorite games, certainly one of my favorite puzzle games. I bought it on the PlayStation after playing it in the arcade, actually. And then below that, another one of my favorite puzzle games of all time, Intelligent Cube. That's another game. When my friend Rafe came over, he brought Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Intelligent Cube. Both great games. There's an ad for Armored Core, which I've never gotten into Armored Core, so I just don't have anything to say about it. More ads. Critical Depth. Kind of an interesting game. I mean, it's a 3D. It reminds me of Descent. You guys ever played Descent, either on the computer or I think Descent came out on the PlayStation, did it not? Reminds me of that, except that you're underwater. So, I mean, it's basically a first-person shooter. Another single-track game. Now we get into some previews. Here's Breath of Fire 3. I have played very, very little of the Breath of Fire series. The main thing I remember when I look at this, or whenever I hear the name Breath of Fire, is my roommate in college. I think we were on summer break, and I went home for a couple weeks to visit my family, and he stayed behind. And I got back, and I was like, "Oh, what have you been up to, man?" And he just tells me, he's like, I've only left the house like 2 times while you were gone. Like, I went to the store once, and I went to go do laundry once. And I'm like, "What have you been doing?" And he says, I just been playing Breath of Fire 3. He played through the whole game. He must have played more than that. Like, if you're going to act like a shut-in, I don't think it takes that long to beat Breath of Fire 3, although I don't actually know. Capcom, if I need to mention that, Capcom RPG. Spawn the Eternal, I'm not a comic book guy, so it's not a game that would have been on my radar back then. I haven't played it now. I believe that when it came out, it reviewed very poorly. On the other side of the page, though, Final Fantasy Tactics. This is an interesting game for me. Final Fantasy VII turned me into a big Final Fantasy fanboy. And so, of course, I bought Final Fantasy Tactics. And the only thing I can say about it, I love this game. I love the ambiance of the game. I love just the way the game plays. I think I'm too stupid to play Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, I can't get that far in the game before I just start getting my ass handed to me. I don't know. But I still love it anyway. Like, I'll just, wait a year and start a new game and play it until I hit a wall again. Maybe I need to read a guide or something. I don't really know. But just a really, really good game. Here's an ad for both Duke Nukem Total Meltdown and Duke Nukem 64. I'm not sure what the difference is, because I think these are both just based on Duke Nukem 3D. I really don't know. The only Duke Nukem game I ever played was the original Duke Nukem, like way back in the day on the PC, when it was just PC speaker audio. And I really like that, but it's the only Duke Nukem game I've ever played, so I don't have anything to say about this one. Auto Destruct, this was kind of a cool game. Electronic Arts game. It's I would say it's an open world, mission-based vehicular combat game. So yes, it's vehicular combat again, but it's at least bringing something new to the table. I thought it was pretty fun. In fact, I was playing it and I was like, why have I never really heard of this game? I mean, obviously I had this magazine back in the day, so I heard of it a little bit, but you know, it's not something I ever rented or anything, but I thought it was pretty fun. Versus over here, I've never played it. Here's Gex, Enter the Gecko. You know, this is the sequel to the original Gex. It's a 3D game instead of a 2D platformer. It's okay. You know, a lot of early 3D platform games suffered from control issues, camera issues, and this one is no exception. Skull Monkeys. I don't think I've ever played Skull Monkeys or one, so nothing to say about those. Oh, this is kind of cool. Here's a contest, whatever you want to call it, from Courier Crisis to win a free bike. And it's funny. I don't think that these companies are affiliated in any way, but the developer of Courier Crisis is GT Interactive Software. And of course, there was the brand of bikes GT when we were kids that were like super cool. You know, they were right up there with like, you know, PK Ripper and stuff like that. And but later they started making, you know, mountain bikes and even road bikes. And so I guess they teamed up here, and you know, first prize here is that you win a GT bike. That's pretty cool. And then here's NCAA Game Breaker 98. Which I assume runs in the same engine or whatever, like we talked about earlier, as Game Day 98. So if you were just more of a college fan, I guess you'd pick this up. I don't believe they don't make any NCAA football games anymore, do they? Here's an ad for the GX TV. It seems like, you know, people that had these back in the day remember them very fondly. And I mean, they look cool, but I can't get past the fact that it's a 13-inch TV. Like, I did not want to play PlayStation on a 13-inch TV if I could help it. I mean, I had like a 19-inch TV that it was nothing special. It was like a hand-me-down from my grandma. But, you know, in terms of screen area, 19 inches is way bigger than 13. This has the cool speakers though. And I mean, $200 is pretty affordable for a TV back then. What else we got? Oh, Pitfall 3D. This is a pretty cool game, I think. I mean, I could see someone looking at this and just being like, ugh, it's like a reboot of an Atari 2600 property. But I thought the game was better than I expected it to be. I'll say that. You know, they're comparing it a little bit to like Tomb Raider 2 and stuff like that. I definitely wouldn't say that. I think it's still a lot more, you know, arcadey. It sticks to its roots in that way. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think they mention it in here. Pitfall Harry is voiced by Bruce Campbell from like The Evil Dead, things like that. In the game, that's pretty cool. But I mean, I can really only think of one Pitfall game that I think is really legitimately a bad game, right? Like Super Pitfall for the NES is awful. But the original Pitfall, Pitfall 2, what was it? Pitfall the Mayan Adventure for 16-bit systems. That was still pretty good. And I think Pitfall 3D is pretty good. Like if you like Pitfall games, if you've never checked this one out, you should. Batman and Robin, I don't believe I've ever played it. Frogger, I assume this would fall into the same category for them as Rampage. I don't believe I've ever played this reboot of Frogger. Huge fan though of the original Frogger. And then over here is Super Motocross. And this game did get released, but it was Jeremy McGrath Supercross 98. I wouldn't say it was good, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have some fun playing it. I mean, the tracks are kind of neat. The atmosphere is kind of neat. The controls are not great. The graphics are definitely not great. I guess if you were a fan of motocross back then, you'd probably want to pick this up. And then here's an ad. I can't fit it all in the frame. I'll just scroll it for you. For Colony Wars. Pretty cool ad, I think. Because it kind of looks like a recruitment poster from like Super Troopers or something. Anyway, Like I already said, all of the Colony War games are good. You should play them. Over here, Namco ad for both Tekken 2 and Soul Blade. Soul Blade, of course, is the predecessor to Soul Calibur, and, you know, Tekken 2 of the world-famous Tekken series. And then we'll just go through strategy quickly. Strategy's not really that fun to read, I don't think, on a magazine read-through. Here's a bunch of stuff for Crash Bandicoot 2. Tomb Raider 2, that would be a lot more helpful, actually. And this is just part 1. So kind of the same thing that happened with me with Final Fantasy VII. You know, I bought issue number 1 to get the walkthrough, but it was only half a walkthrough, and then I had to buy issue number 2 to get the rest of the walkthrough. I don't know why I didn't just go buy a strategy guide, but I think, you know, that was my first time buying video game magazines. I think I just thought it was cool. It is cool. Pretty meaty guide for Tomb Raider 2, and then here's an ad for this Mad Catz wheel, and, you know, maybe it's a really cool wheel. It doesn't look like one. I was never really tempted to buy a racing wheel back then. I have one now for my PS4, and it's great, but, you know, it's Mad Catz. So was it great? Probably not. Combos list for Street Fighter EX Plus. The video game control glove, you know, I guess it's sort of a then modern take on the Power Glove. And, you know, some of this stuff's funny. You know, GamePro says, Reality Quest, the glove, will change the way you play games. I mean, true, right? That doesn't mean it in a good way. Ultra Game Players says, the glove does give the dedicated gamer a competitive control advantage. That makes me want to go back and read that review and see what they actually say. I would like to know in what way this gives anybody an advantage. And then PSM says the coveted glove is a truly revolutionary controller. I don't know. Again, you can take that to mean you can take that in different ways. More strategies here is Test Drive 4, giving you just some tips on how to drive each car to its maximum potential. We've talked about these ads before for, you know, winning these ultimate game rigs, and how, you know, as we know now, these were scams. Colony Wars. Have I mentioned yet in this episode that Colony Wars is really good and you should play it? If I haven't, Colony Wars is really good and you should play it. There's a Ghost in the Shell sweepstakes. That's pretty cool. Grand prize gets an artwork collection, a rare copy of the Ghost in the Shell comic book, and the Ghost in the Shell action game for the PlayStation. That's pretty cool. Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. Actually, I could have used this. I was getting a little bit stuck. You know, it's sort of, again, it's like Flashback or Out of This World. You know, it's a side-scrolling, you know, action platformer, but it's very sort of puzzle-oriented. Really good game. Oh, hey, I forgot about this. Here's the lid sticker for this month. And well, that's obviously Lara Croft. Is that I want to say that's Nina from Tekken. I might be wrong. And then I think isn't that the lady from Fighting Force? Not positive. And we've talked about this before, but for anybody that missed it, they started doing these tip sleeves, and these were pretty cool. This is like on cardstock, and it's perforated so that you would rip them out and then fold them up and then tuck them in with the manual of your games. I think that's pretty cool. 1-900 Ultra Game Players Hotline. Somebody call that. I'm not going to do it. Somebody call that and then leave a comment and tell us all what it is now. Is it nothing or is it porn? It's one or the other. Now we go from strategies into codes. Here's all the tip lines for all these different game publishers. More codes. I'm just trying to get to there's a letter section in the back here I want to get to. IGN calendar of events. IGN even existed in 1997, if you can believe that. Here we go. Letters. All right. What do we got here? I'm not going to read all of them, but I always look for interesting ones. Lid sticker madness. I recently bought your September issue, and I think the lid sticker is pretty cool. Will you put stickers in every issue? So people like the lid stickers. You know, I wonder if anybody out there like would just take the lid sticker out of each issue and just stick it on top of the previous lid sticker on the lid of their PlayStation, kind of like you do with the registration tags on your license plate. Like, does somebody out there have like a 1/4 of an inch thick? I don't remember how many issues came with lid stickers, but I wonder if out there somewhere is a PlayStation that has like every PSM lid sticker ever sandwiched on top of the lid. Some guy appreciating their sports coverage. I don't know. He's talking about we got an uncensored version of Final Fantasy VII. Well, kind of not really, but okay. Taking a chance on Japanese titles. The Japanese video game market is so large compared to the U.S. one. Sorry, I said I was going to use my pointer. And I was wondering if you think more U.S. companies are taking chances on porting over niche titles. Sony's taking a chance with PaRappa, but do you think that more companies will follow? And then Bill from Nihon Game Otaku responds, I'm personally all for bringing niche titles stateside. Well, of course you are. Especially Japanese wrestling games. I guess he's talking about like, Fire Pro type of stuff. As for other niche titles, it's really going to depend on whether the title is seen as too culturally specific. I don't see Super Virtua Pachinko 2X raking in lots of cash here. I agree. Oh, this is interesting. He kisses their butt a little bit. I have a few questions I'd like you to ask, however, just because this is the kind of thing where I think most people would have read this back then and not understood, I wouldn't have, what this guy was talking about. In your first issue, you talked about different ways to connect the PlayStation, one of which I believe was an RGB cable. What exactly is an RGB cable, and how do you know if your TV is compatible? And then Noah writes back to say an RGB cable will give you the highest resolution. Well, not quite, with no color bleeding. True. If you would know if your TV had an RGB input, it would probably cost way over $1,000, and it will have a plug on the back that looks like a plug you'd find on a computer monitor. Not exactly true, but at the same time, how do you describe, SCART to somebody in like 3 sentences? Somebody's asking if PSM will ever publish any hint books. That would have been cool. Of course, they say no. Will Salamander Deluxe Pack come out in the U.S.? I wish. Although, now I don't care. But back then, I would have thought it was cool. And, and they actually say Konami has decided to release Salamander Deluxe Pack in the U.S. It should be out in October, or in December, rather. And, obviously that didn't happen. So... and then he asked, will Street Fighter 3 come out for the PlayStation? And of course, Street Fighter 3 did not come out for the PlayStation. It only came out for the Dreamcast. This person's asking for longer reviews. And, I don't know. I kind of get that just because you'd read some of the other game magazines back then that were sort of geared towards older people, like Next Generation, maybe Game Fan. And they would do longer reviews. And that's cool. But, I'm kind of a big fan of short reviews. Like, don't spoil the game. Just give me the broad strokes. Let me know if it's a game that I think I should check out and just sort of leave it at that. So I like the length of their reviews. But I'm actually going to read Chris's response here. He says, we've had quite a few letters wanting longer, more detailed reviews. So I thought I'd give you guys my take on why we do things the way we do. What you have to realize is this. If we give each review more space, say a page for each game, then we would have to cut down most of the other sections and lose some of them entirely. We wouldn't be able to preview nearly as many games, the letter section would be much shorter, and so on. We opted for a more concise review system. However, I think you'll find that our reviews still contain plenty enough information to help you make a buying decision. Maybe we don't give you a level-by-level rundown of the game or rate it on a 1 to 100 scale, but after reading our review, you'll know whether or not you're interested in buying it, which is what it's all about anyway. And I agree completely. And then over here, you can win an ASCII arcade stick, and they give you 3 challenges that you have to try to complete. Can you get all the Bandy booty in Crash Bandicoot 2, which, as I mentioned, is actually very difficult because you have to find all those hidden gems. Challenge number 2 is to play Test Drive 4 and beat Noah's time. They give his time for one of the tracks in a particular car. And challenge number 3, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha. What do you have to do here? Play through the expert training mode and accomplish every character's combos and special moves. Marketplace, as I've talked about before, it just kind of blows my mind to see this. And this was literally people selling their games in the back of a magazine and just giving their email address and or their home address. I mean, I don't know if they charged people for that. I don't think so. I mean, obviously you weren't going to try to sell one game in the back of a newspaper, because even back then, placing a classified ad in the newspaper was very expensive. But this just seems like such a slow way. But maybe for people who didn't have internet access, because, back, before the internet was what it is now, if you go back and look at old Usenet posts, you see lots of people selling games on Usenet. Over here, what's coming up in the next issue? First annual PSM Awards. That was pretty cool. I remember that issue. I remember being upset because they gave Game of the Year to Symphony of the Night instead of Final Fantasy VII. Here's an ad for San Francisco Rush Extreme Racing, which right around this time, there's a place where the hockey rink where I used to go play ice hockey, they had this arcade cabinet in there. And then on the back is an ad for G-Police. So there you go. So that's it. That is PSM issue number 4 from December of 1997. Pretty cool Christmas issue. I think that was a lot of fun to read through again. I hope all of you out there have a very good Christmas and a Happy New Year. And as I said, we've got a lot of content coming up in this next year. It is fully my intention to be back working on the show now. In the meantime, if you haven't already, you should go check out CGQ Plus. Lots of content there. Once again, link down in the description. That's going to do it for this episode of Classic Gaming Quarterly. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And next time, hopefully, won't be too long from now. Bye-bye.